Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Wyman, and I'm in my final semester at Lakehead University. Before going into the teaching world, I wanted to research the big question of what are the best ways to teach phonics to students with different needs and different levels of reading in a diverse classroom. In this presentation, I will discuss phonics instruction, specifically how it helps English language learners, or ELLs, become stronger readers. This is especially important to me due to my personal experiences and the limited support that I have received. I have worked with students, particularly in grades 2 and 3, who struggle with sounding out words. I have also observed that some teachers find it challenging to teach phonics or support struggling readers. To address this, I have created a simple yet effective resource that is filled with evidence based research and that I've been able to gather with the guidance of my amazing instructor, Deborah McCallum, to help all teachers teach phonics more easily. We often hear about the science of reading, but how does it apply to ELLs? The simple view of reading tells us that reading is a combination of decoding and comprehension. However, ELLs face an added layer to this. They must master decoding in a language they're still learning. That's why explicit instruction is essential. Let's take a deeper look into decoding and comprehension first. Reading is made up of two big skills: decoding, which allows us to recognize letters and sounds, and comprehension, which allows us to understand the meaning of words and sentences. This is called the simple view of reading. If a student struggles with either decoding or comprehension, reading becomes difficult. So, ELL students often face challenges because English has different sounds than their first language, which is especially difficult when learning English and the English language, considering all the different sounds one letter can make, such as we have yeah, like the letter Y, it can make the sound yeah for your, or it can end off with E for really. So we have to consider all of those different challenges when teaching English. They also may not know common English words yet, or they need more time to connect sounds to letters. The good news is that research shows that systematic phonics instruction helps all students, especially ELLs. Now, let's take a look at some effective phonics strategies that can make a big difference for ELL students. These strategies that we are going to go over will be the strategies that are included in my free resource that I've made for everyone, which we will get to at the end of this slideshow. Have you ever heard someone say or even thought about how phonics doesn't work for ELLs because they don't even know the sounds yet? This is actually a myth. So, research from the National Panel of Reading shows that explicit phonics instruction is crucial for ELLs. The key is making it visual and interactive. Some effective strategies can include sound mapping through Elkinen boxes with picture cues, listening stations and have students record and listen to themselves, and multisensory learning such as sandpaper, letters, air writing, and tapping out sounds, which we'll get into just in a bit. Many ELLs struggle with decoding words because they're learning both letter sound relationships and meaning at the same time. We can support them by using explicit phonics instruction and oral language development together. Now, the best practices for just focusing on that phonics instruction and oral language development can include total physical response, which involves teaching phonemes with movement. And activities for this will be included in the resource that I've created in just a bit. It also can include story based phonics, which involves using familiar narratives to teach sound patterns. For example, going through a story and have students underline all the s sounds. And again, multisensory learning. By incorporating sand trays and finger writing and tapping sounds, this will allow our ELL students to feel what they're doing before they actually write it down on paper. For example, we have the word hat. So we're going to break it down into sounds. So we have our ah, t. And a way for an ELL student to do this, to understand the sounds in the words and help with memorizing and understanding that each letter has its sound, can include tapping. So they can tap on the desk. So far, we have mainly explained decoding and briefly comprehension, but now I want to dive deeper into how phonics and vocabulary development helps ELLs build a foundation of reading. But what is comprehension? We know that decoding words is just one part of literacy, but students must also understand what they read. For many ELLs, this is where challenges arise, especially when texts include unfamiliar vocabulary, complex sentence structures, or cultural references that they don't recognize. Key research explains that ELLs benefit from structured scaffolding to understand text, and graphic organizers help ELLs visualize story structure and relation between ideas. Some strategies for comprehension can include picture walks. So, before reading a book, activating background knowledge helps ELLs connect new information to what they already know. For example, showing students the cover to a book that you're about to read them and asking them what they think the story is about based on the cover. Then flipping through the pages and reading the book and describing what you see on each page. Also, introducing key vocabulary of this book prior to reading is a key to this activity. This can be done in guided reading groups and allow for differentiated support. Then having students fill a graphic organizer about the story containing sentence frames and having that differentiated instruction for students that need to orally respond. Now, we're going to give a little deep dive into the strategies that are going to be in the resource cards later on in this presentation. One of the evidence based phonics strategies is the Orton Gillingham approach, which brings us to our first strategy that will be also in our resource, as I mentioned. So we have our multisensory learning. ELL students learn best when they use multiple senses, such as seeing, hearing, touching, and moving. We can implement these senses through this method. First, you would show a letter and say the sound of the letter, not the letter itself. So as we can see, we have the letter Y here. We would show the letter, say it's the letter Y, and then we would have students trace the letter in the air or in the sand or even on sandpaper just to feel that sensory while saying the sound at the same time, just to get memory for that letter. So we're going to practice this together right now. So this is what it would look like in the classroom. So with the letter Y on the screen, you would have it on your screen or on the board, and you would have students trace the letter Y while going yeah, yeah, yeah. And they can trace it a few times. And sometimes you can even have like a picture of the letter Y being drawn on the screen while they're drawing with their finger or in the sand again or on sandpaper. So because Y is a tricky sound, like I mentioned before, automatically, I've noticed in my classroom, a lot of students are going to say it like the letter W. So they're going to go wah, because when you say the letter Y, you start with that W sound. So it's really important to reinforce that you're going yeah, yeah, not just yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you have to start with that yeah, yeah. Um, so it's especially important to remind ELL students of that confusion, because sometimes I even got confused on that before I learned it through researching many phonics strategies. And this method ultimately will help students remember letter sound connections better. The Florida Center for Reading Research and ONLIT have great information activities, especially when it comes to our strategy 2 of phonological awareness activities. So, before reading words, students need to hear and recognize sounds in words. And this can be done in 2 of these fun activities, and there's also going to be more activities within our resource later on. So, the first one in this slideshow is sound matching. This would be done by showing pictures of objects and asking students to sort them by beginning sounds. You can also show the word itself instead of the picture. For example, if there were 2 cars, one with a cat and one with a car on it, they would go together because they both make that k sound. Echo reading is another activity which involves reading a short sentence aloud, and students will repeat exactly how you say it. For example, I can't wait to see my friends. Students will say it with the same tone and expression, which will also help them practice the tones with different punctuation. And this will help with pronunciation and fluency. So now we're moving on to strategy 3. Reading Rockets helps us look more into systematic phonics instruction because phonics needs to be explicit and structured. Firstly, it is important to teach one sound at a time. For example, S says S. Again, rather than saying the letter itself, you don't want students to go S says S. We want to just say that beginning sound. So they go S, not S. And then students are able to practice blending sounds together. For example, if we had the word sat on a like on a resource card, they're not going to say S sat. We're going to say it like S at, sat. So another great way to do this is doing the sound impound. Students will go with their fingers. They'll go s, at, sat. Pounding it is when you would say the whole sound blended together, or whole word blended together, sorry. And as students are going through this systematic phonics process, it's important to have books in the classroom library to allow students to practice their independent reading with, which should include simple and decodable words in order for students to apply their phonics skills. And I know in the library of most schools, librarians have great resources for these types of readings. So I highly recommend going to your school library and asking which books would be the best for students to ELL students to look at decoding sounds and words. Our strategy 4 with the evidence from OnLit will support vocabulary and comprehension. ELLs need to understand words while they learn phonics rather than using memorization. In order for them to truly comprehend what they are reading, teaching high frequency words, also known as sight words or heart words, such as is, the, was, are important because these are commonly used in everyday conversations and readings. And they do have those tricky sounds in them. Like when we say the word is, it almost sounds like you're saying IZ, or even was, again, it sounds like almost like WUZ, which I've seen a lot in my teaching practice with students spelling it like that, which is great because they can hear that sound as they're saying the word and they're able to know it's making that type of noise. But it's important to reinforce them as heart words or sight words. And even though that they're spelled with an IS or AS, it's going to make that kind of Z sound at the end. Again, using pictures and gestures and real life objects will help students practice the words and just using them a lot in real life, reinforcing them in different classroom readings again, and just always asking simple questions that will include these words will always be able to have students reinforce what they're saying, having them write them down in sentence writing. And it'll just also just boost their confidence and just you're always checking for understanding and just practice with heart words is or sight words is the main thing you got to do. Now just moving my camera to the other side so you can see all the references that I have used to gather all our evidence-based research, and there will be some more in our actual phonics instruction resource cards. So then when you print them out, you're able to go back on these resources to come up with more strategies to allow for modification, accommodation. But here's just a list of the ones that we've gone through in this presentation so far. So now we're going to get into the resource cards that I've made for you. They're all printable. I would recommend laminating them. But let's get into all that in just a second. Okay, now we're going to go over our phonics instruction resource cards for ELLs. So in this resource, I have at the beginning a how to use card. So this is going to let us know that we can print and laminate each section to create durable and reusable resource cards. I'd also recommend maybe getting cardstock and putting it on the back, especially if you're going to be doing games where you're doing matching games and having the cards flip down so you can't see through them. Also, I recommend using them during literacy centers or small group instruction or one-on-one. And also, this is very helpful because you want to always have a English fluent reader with your ELL student just to make sure that they are staying on the right track, and just so everything is consistent until they get to the point where they're able to do it on their own. And also modify and intensify activities based on student needs and progress. And use these to guide your own resource cards and add on to or take away as much as you want. I also have our references at the end of this resource, at the end of these resource cards, so you can go through the resources and again add and take away to modify and intensify as you please. So our section 1 of these cards are going to include the evidence-based strategies for teaching ELLs. At the beginning of each section, I'm going to have a card that will let you know the key ideas in this section. So for this section, it's going to The key takeaways are going to have systematic phonics instruction and how this is going to improve reading ability across all skill levels and preventing and remediating reading difficulties. So this section is going to use picture cards for matching words to build familiarity, and students will be encouraged again to complete this resource with a fluent English reader for guided practice. So I'm just going to go over a couple of the cards in each section just because there are a lot of cards and you'll just be able to get the gist of it. For this section, we have a photo of a cat. We also have the word cat. So this section is going to help build that familiarity with the word to its meaning. So if we see the word cat, we're going to match it with the photo cat. And also, when you're having your students read out the words, make sure they always read it out before they match it with the picture. And again, reinforce that sound impound, that k, a, t, cat. So we're just going to move on to our next section. This section will contain a lot of different photos with matching words. So the section goes over the simple view of reading. And the key ideas in this section is going to include phonics skills plus language comprehension and how it equals reading comprehension. And this section of phonics is an asset for decoding unfamiliar words, and teaching phonics alongside language comprehension builds stronger readers. So this section will use picture cards again with corresponding words to teach decoding and meaning. Each of the sections for this section, there's going to be a subsection for each part. So our first subsection is going to include our CVC words, such as the word cat, and there's going to be some multiple words as there are in our previous section, just to create that type of reinforcement of the sounds. So these are really common sounds we use in the English language, like k, a, t. Also d, a, g. We also have our blends and digraphs. So for example, with the card ship, we're gonna have to teach students that that SH sound is its own sound in one. So when they're practicing the word, they aren't gonna go s, h, I, p, sahip. It's gonna be sh, I, p, ship. Again, with chat, that CH is its own sound together, so ch, a, t, chat. Now we're gonna go over to our silent E words. So we have a picture of a bike. And if they do not know what a bike is, the word bike needs to be explained that the E is not to be said. It's not that the E isn't there, because the E is still there. If the E wasn't there, it would be a completely different word. For example, if we were to hide the E, they might think the word is bick. So having that silent E on the end of silent E words completely changes the way that word is said. So instead of saying bick, having that E on the end is going to be pronounced bike. We're going to take a look at our vowel teams now. So let's look at the word team itself. Again, the E and A are going to be pronounced together. So that's going to be its own sound. So when we look at the word, it's not going to be t, e, a, m, to a-m. It's going to be t, e, m, team. And again, with blue, and this one also has a silent E on the end. So this is going to be a bit more of a challenging word. So students are going to pronounce it b, l, oo. They're not going to go bl, b, l, e, because that U and E you put together and it's a vowel team. So it makes one sound, not two. Now we have our controlled words, such as the word car. So when we're pronouncing our controlled words, that R is going to be paired up with our vowel. So k, R. It won't be k, a, The A and the R make a sound itself. Now we're going to look at our diphthongs. So again, this is a vowel team in this one, but our O and I are going to be its own sound together. So k, oi, n, coin. Instead of k, o, n, O and I is its own diphthong together. We also have our multisyllabic words. So we have banana, and this subsection gets a little bit more challenging with a bit more challenging words such as elephant, which elephant is a more challenging word because we have to teach that PH makes a f sound instead of ph sound. Now we have our heart/sight words, such as the, you, was, and as I said in the presentation before, it's important that we go over that practice because the A and the S sounds like a U and a Z, which is what we see a lot of students spelling out on their papers when they're writing was. But the A and the S needs to be practiced as heart and sight words, and it's going to be pronounced as was. Same with of, it's not pronounced. It's pronounced with like a UV sound, so v. However, the OF makes the of sound. Now let's look at our word family section. So we're going to start with our first family of at. We'll have the word cat, bat, and mat. So students are going to find these three words and they're going to match them together and they're going to place them with the word family they think it belongs in. So they're not going to place it in the op, they're going to place it with the AT. Let's go to our rhyming words now. So we have play, say, run, fun, and students need to make sure they're saying all these words out loud when doing this resource because you want to hear that rhyming sound when going through this section. So the beginning of unhappy, the UN completely changes the meaning of happy. So we need to explain how un is the prefix of the word happy. So unhappy. Same with redo, adding that re onto do completely changes the meaning of do, so it becomes redo. Now we have our suffix words. So with the word harmless, if we add less on the end of harmless, it completely changes the meaning again. So instead of something being giving harm, it's harmless. We also have the word kindness, which again changes the meaning slightly, but not all the way like it did with harmless. Now we have our compound words. So for this section, maybe when teaching a section, you can cover half of the word. So showing just the word butter, and then covering the word butter and showing just the word fly, and then putting them together to make one. So butterfly. Same with toothbrush. And a lot of these words are words they'll see or hear in their everyday life, and also having those photos on these cards will allow to meaning to be created when learning these words. We also have our homophones. So this one's a bit of a tricky section. So this is gonna, as students become more advanced, this is where this will come into. So we have the words to, like number 2, and then we have TO and TOO. So if we see the slide, I have blank apples, we would think T2, so TWO. And then TO would belong in I am going to the store. And then TOO would belong in it is too hot in here. So with this part, you would lay out the cards, so each of the homophone sections, and you would have students place the cards in each section after teaching the meanings of these words. Okay, and we also have this for all the theirs, see, flower, and some more high frequency words that students will hear in their everyday life. So such as said, could, would, should, and those three would be good to teach together just because they have that same OULD ending. Now we have our contractions. So, for example, the word won't. I put the two words that the contraction comes from at the bottom just for the student to see where that word won't comes from because won't is actually is two words, which is will not. So students need to learn that that contraction or short form is where the word won't come from. And then we look at just opposite words. So students might see the word hot, again with the meaning using a picture on the side, and cold, or fast, and slow. And then we have our question words, such as who, what, where, when, and why. And we have our short versus long vowel words. So tap with a picture of a tap, and tape with a picture of a tape. And again, adding that silent E on the end completely changes the meaning of the word. So let's look at our section 3 now. So we have some phonological awareness activities. I'm going to go through one with you and just show how this section works with the activities. So in this section, we're going to go over the key ideas of developing phonological awareness and how it improves early reading skills, and activities that students are engaged in will essentially further their skills. And this section will also use activities that focus on rhyming, syllables, blending, and segmenting. So let's just go through activity 1, hopscotch, syllable hopscotch. So each activity is going to include the instructions, materials, and word examples. Again, intensify and modify as much as you would like to, depending on your classroom. So the instructions for this activity would be to create a hopscotch grid using either chalk on the tarmac outside or hoops maybe in the gym. And each of the hoops or grids are going to represent a syllable in the word. So the educator will say a word such as watermelon, and the students will jump in the hopscotch while saying each syllable or each sound in the word. And you can have students even come up with their own words and then have them jump in syllables. They can create their own hopscotch grids and show the class, and then also challenge students by using short phrases. We also have our rhyme relay, word stretchers, a mystery sound box, or a sound scavenger hunt. And for our section 4, we're going to go over on-lit strategies for phonics and fluency. So this section will go over the key ideas of rhyming, segmentation, and blending sounds as well. And it's going to use activities that focus on reading fluency, accuracy, and expression. So in this section, we have an activity called sound matching. So this is sort of like a game, but it's more so, again, like a matching cards, kind of like at the beginning, but smaller cards. So in this activity, the educator is going to cut out pictures of cards that represent different phonemes, and the students are going to work in pairs to sort them into categories, so either beginning, middle, or ending sounds. And an extension for this activity would be to add rhyming words or long versus short vowel cards, which will all be in the cards that we'll get to next. And students can also use this card to do, again, memory matching games. So having that card stock on the back, having them cut out, and they're flipping them to find the sounds that match. So let's look at the cards that are printable and that are cuttable for you in your classroom. So for example, if we were to have these all cut out and students were to be reading words, they would maybe see the car or the word car and the word cat. And they both start with that k, k sound, so they would get those two cards. Those would be theirs. And maybe looking at this one, maybe they see the word bite, and they see the word kite. So that can be either considered the beginning, or sorry, the middle sound or the ending sound. And there's going to be multiples of words, as we can see, to bites, because some words might have the same beginning sounds and some words might have the same ending sounds. So maybe bite and bear have the same beginning sounds, but kite and bite have the same middle or ending sounds. And here are the categories that students can sort the cards into, whether they're playing a game or not. So again, we have our beginning, middle, and ending sounds, and then our rhyming word pairs and long versus short vowel words. We also have an echo reading activity. So in this activity, the educator will read a short phrase or sentence aloud with expression. We went through this before again, and students will repeat it back, mimicking tone, expression, and fluency. And this will allow students to understand expression and tone when saying certain phrases. And here are the specific references I was able to gather a lot of activities and ideas from in this resource. But thank you for listening. I hope that you can print this out and use it in your classroom. I also left a contact email on the poster of this presentation. So if there's anything, any questions, comments, concerns about this presentation, please feel free to let me know. I would love to hear other teacher feedback, and let me know if you used it in your classroom. And I hope you all enjoyed and learned something from this resource. Thank you so much.